challenge of reconciliation. Setting the context. Canada has a long history of colonialism in relation to Aboriginal peoples. That history and its policies of cultural genocide and assimilation have left deep scars on the lives of many Aboriginal people, on Aboriginal communities, as well as on Canadian society, and have deeply damaged the relationship between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal peoples. It took a long time for that damage to have been done, and for the relationship we see to have been created, and it will take a long time to fix it. But that process has already begun. An important process of healing and reconciling that relationship began in the 1980s, with church apologies for their treatment of Aboriginal peoples and disrespect of their cultures. It continued with the findings of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples, along with court recognition of the validity of the survivors' stories. It culminated in the Indian Residential Schools Settlement Agreement and the Prime Minister of Canada's apology in Parliament in June 2008, along with the apologies of all other parliamentary leaders. That process of healing and reconciliation must continue. The ultimate objective must be to transform our country and restore mutual respect between peoples and nations. Reconciliation is in the best interests of all of Canada. It is necessary not only to resolve the ongoing conflicts between Aboriginal peoples and institutions of the country, but also in order for Canada to remove a stain on its past and be able to maintain its claim to be a leader in the protection of human rights among nations of the world. Canada's historical development, as well as the view held strongly by some that the history of that development is accurate and beneficent, raises significant barriers to reconciliation in the 21st century. No Canadian can take pride in this country's treatment of Aboriginal peoples, and for that reason, all Canadians have a critical role to play in advancing reconciliation in ways that honor and revitalize the nation-to-nation treaty relationship. At the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's Traditional Knowledge Keepers Forum, held in June 2014, Chief Ian Campbell said, "Our history is your history. As Canada, until Canada accepts that, this society will never flourish to its full potential." The history and destructive legacy of the residential school system is a powerful reminder that Canada disregarded its own historical roots. Canada's determination to assimilate Aboriginal peoples, in spite of the early relationship established at first contact and formalized and maintained in treaties, attests to that fact. As Jerry St. Germain, then a Canadian senator, said, "There can be no doubt that the founders of Canada somehow lost their moral compass in their relations with the people who occupied and possessed the land. While we cannot change history, we can learn from it, and we can use it to shape our common future. This effort is crucial in realizing the vision of creating a compassionate and humanitarian society, the society that our ancestors, the Aboriginal, the French, and the English peoples envisioned so many years ago. Our home, Canada." Aboriginal peoples have always remembered the original relationship they had with early Canadians. That relationship of mutual support, respect, and assistance was confirmed by the Royal Proclamation of 1763 and the treaties with the Crown that were negotiated in good faith by their leaders. That memory, confirmed by historical analysis and passed through Indigenous oral histories, has sustained Aboriginal peoples in their long political struggle to live with dignity as self-determining peoples with their own cultures, laws, and connections to the land. The destructive impacts of residential schools, the Indian Act, and the Crown's failure to keep its treaty promises have damaged the relationship between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal peoples. The most significant damage is to the trust that has been broken between the Crown and Aboriginal peoples. That broken trust must be repaired. The vision that led to the breach in trust must be replaced with a new vision for Canada, one that fully embraces Aboriginal people's right to self-determination within and in partnership with a viable Canadian sovereignty. If Canadians fail to find that vision, then Canada will not resolve long-standing conflicts between the Crown and Aboriginal peoples over treaty and Aboriginal rights, lands, and resources, or the education, health, and well-being of Aboriginal peoples. Reconciliation will not be achieved, and neither will hope for reconciliation be sustainable over time. It would not be inconceivable that the unrest we see today among young Aboriginal people could grow to become a challenge to the country's own self of well-being and its very security. Reconciliation must become a way of life. It will take years, many years, to repair damaged trust and relationships in Aboriginal communities and between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal peoples. Reconciliation not only requires apologies, reparations, the relearning of Canada's national history in public commemoration, but also needs real social, political, and economic change. Ongoing public education and dialogue are essential to reconciliation. Governments, churches, educational institutions, and Canadians from all walks of life are responsible for taking action on reconciliation in concrete ways, working collaboratively with Aboriginal peoples. Reconciliation begins with each and every one of us. The Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal youth of our community, of our country, have told the Commission that they want to know the truth about the history and legacy of residential schools. They want to understand their responsibilities as parties to the same treaties, in other words, as treaty people. They want to learn about the rich contributions that Aboriginal peoples have made to this country. They understand that reconciliation involves a conversation not only about residential schools, but also about all other aspects of the relationship between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal peoples. As commissioners, we believe that reconciliation is about respect. That includes both self-respect for Aboriginal people and mutual respect among all Canadians. All young people need to know where they are from, who they are. Aboriginal children and youth searching for their own identities and places of belonging need to know and take pride in their Indigenous roots. They need to know the answers to some very basic questions. Who are my people? What is our history? How are we unique? Where do I belong? Where is my homeland? What is my language? And how does it connect me to my nation's spiritual beliefs, cultural practices, and ways of being in the world? They also need to know why things are the way they are today. That requires an understanding of the history of colonialism, including the residential school system and how it has affected their families, communities, their peoples, and themselves. Of equal importance, non-Aboriginal children and youth need to comprehend how their own identities and family histories have been shaped by a version of Canadian history that has marginalized Aboriginal people's history and experience. They need to know how notions of European superiority and Aboriginal inferiority have tainted mainstream society's ideas about and attitudes towards Aboriginal peoples in ways that have been profoundly disrespectful and damaging. They too need to understand Canada's history as a settler society and how assimilation policies have affected Aboriginal peoples. This knowledge and understanding will lay the groundwork for establishing mutual respectful relationships.